If you find you're unsettled listening today, reach out to a trusted friend or go to tradespodcast.com and click on resources.
We are men in the trades, forging health in the drug poisoning crisis. This is
Off the Clock Toolbox Talk.
Today we're jumping straight into our conversation with Aeris' story, part 1, that started 3 minutes before we actually began the episode. We're including every minute to help us understand his unbelievable story. Trigger warnings are this episode includes graphic detail of the effects of Crohn's disease, as well as detailed discussion of the aftermath of losing someone to overdose. If this just isn't for you today, please take care of yourself and come back to it another day. Here's Aeris' story, part 1.
I would have some chills for, I don't know, maybe a day or two, but it wasn't enough for me to like have to miss doing rebar, you know? And when you have mild withdrawals with Crohn's disease while trying to do rebar, like that, it can be a nightmare, you know? Incontinence can be a real issue, especially when porta potties have no TP.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
God. What a disaster. Like, you have my respect for going through that and like trying to survive it, because I've been through some stuff like totally different, but just insane circumstances that you somehow have to push your way through, and just not having any kind of resources to be able to do it with, but yet you have to, because you have to put a roof over your head and you have to do
feed
all
your
that
family
stuff. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Like I remember when it first started manifesting my Crohn's, and like I'd have a breakfast sandwich in the morning, you know, we stop at Tim's at like, 6 in the morning, and by 6:35 I would be like doubled over in pain, have to run into a gas station bathroom. If it was rainy, I'd have all this rain gear on, and the buckles would be dripping in other people's urine in like the gas station toilet, or even on the job site in the porta potty, because it's so cramped in there. When you gotta go, you gotta go. So you undo your like bulky rain gear, and your buckles would drip in other people's urine, and you have to do them back up. So you smell other people's urine for the entire day, and
oh my God,
that's just the way it is, you know?
Shit. That sounds terrible.
Like you're a survivor, man. Like,
wow.
wow.
I'm so many times, even my own bosses got really supportive bosses, which is my saving grace. And they would be like, you need to get another job, man. Like, we love having you around. And they wouldn't say it like that, because it'd be construction language, so it'd be some sort of insult, but hurled at me in a really polite way.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, yeah, I know I should probably be a CSO. I don't know if I have enough work experience. And I just procrastinate because I was comfortable. I loved my crew, and I knew that if I got a job somewhere else on a different job site with this Crohn's and with all my ailments, that I don't know if I'd be able to perform.
Yeah. Wow. All right.
So
well, let's
how do we want to
start at the beginning. Although that was also it was graphic, but at the same time it was your reality, so it really paints the picture of how harsh things were. So
this is like it's like a tattoo, man. I've got some really bad tattoos that I flaunt. So it's just a snippet of my reality at this juncture. So
we're gonna pull out 10-second excerpts and judge your entire life based on them.
Please do.
Yes.
Yeah, please do.
Oh gosh. All right. So we'll just get going then. So hi everybody. We're here today. We've got Daniel Snyder back with us co-hosting.
Hey.
Nice to see you, Daniel.
Yeah, thank you. How's everyone doing?
Excellent. And we're here to talk with Aeris Finch today. Aeris, we've been doing some pre-episode conversation, and already my mind is blown.
Yeah, I mean, my life's had quite a few ups and downs, and I just really want to say, before I even start telling the story, that family is everything. And I'm really blessed to have a really supportive family, like a really supportive partner. I have a really supportive parents, of like amazing children, and without them, I wouldn't have made it through any of this, let alone the massive overdose that I had. So I got into rebar right out of going to a treatment center.
Mm.
in New West.
Mm.
And
When was that? What year was this?
this was 2012, beginning of 2012.
Okay, so
Uh,
just before like pre-fentanyl, really, pre-fentanyl crisis.
yes,
Yeah.
I was going in for generalized party disorder, but I mean, for the most part, my life had become quite unmanageable. I
Is that
actually
actually
in,
a term, generalized party disorder? I kind of like that.
I mean, that's what it was.
That's so
Uh,
good.
yeah, I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop giving her. I had been in a band for a few years. I had gotten back into like dabbling in coke and oxys and sometimes picking up like street down. It wasn't an everyday thing, but it was enough where, my band had broken up because they couldn't work with me and they wanted to travel, and
Mm,
it was a point where it's like, should we continue this or should we stop? And I had also had just started an amazing relationship with my now wife, and she had a kid, and I really thought this could be a good time to buckle up and be a dad and be a spouse and just change everything up, but I had no idea how to begin.
mm,
So I had a few friends who had gone to this treatment center, and they were they were like, just call them every single day and tell them you want to come. Call them every day. So I did that for about 2 weeks. I call every day. I got on welfare so I could get a bed through them, and
Yeah.
they,
mm,
blanked me for a while. No, sorry, we're full. And then it was every day. Then eventually I came in for a visit. I think I made everybody laugh. Um, they seemed to like me. And then they said, you got to be clean and sober for 2 weeks if you want to come in. We got to be serious. We're going to urine test you. We'll know.
mm,
And I think I was still taking Ativan, but I mean,
Hmm.
that was for the most part clean. Except I think the day or two before I went in, I may have done Oxy just to, that's what we do, just try to
Hmm.
derail ourselves
That's a
right
lot
when
of barriers. It sounds like right off the top, trying to get help for yourself, and you have to call every day
Yes,
and meet all this criteria, and I mean, I think it sounds like you manage that, but I don't know that everyone can manage
I
that.
did. Yeah, and this place is especially expensive, right? So it's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars a month,
Yeah.
and I would have a welfare bed. So I think they want to vet you. They want to vet
Mm,
you. And this is before there was death everywhere,
right.
right?
Hmm.
So, I mean, things have changed drastically, but yeah, I got into this place and did the 12 steps, wrote the steps in a very thorough program, made a lot of connections. The New West scene is very, very, very integrated, and I ended up doing 6 months there, had a lot of friends,
Hmm.
but I just because I wasn't really at a bottom when I entered, I sort of was still like definitely had reservations, you would call them, right? Like
Mm,
I'm gonna have drinks, I'm gonna have
Hmm.
drinks, and I believe they saw me disconnect. They saw that, and I could see them as they gave me more freedoms. They would look at me like, "We don't know what you're gonna do. You're not connecting as much as you should." And I was just like, "Yeah, I'll be fine. I got a beautiful girlfriend, a beautiful kid. I'm never gonna relapse. This is great. Life's great. I'm gonna hook in, even though I'm moving to Mission. And I'm gonna hook in all the time, and it'll be fine." And I also saw a friend of mine working in New West on a tower, and I like yelled up. I was like, and Chris. And he looked at me, he was like, "Oh, hey." And I was like, "Can I have a job?" And then he he just laughed, and he just hold up, came down there, gave me the number for this company, and it turned out I had had a little bit of experience doing rebar before then. So I got a job. I had never been employable. Never had a full-time job that I didn't get fired from in the first month, ever.
Hmm.
wow.
So yeah, I just ended up really bonding with this company and doing reinforcing and steel, and then I got bad Crohn's and I had to have multiple surgeries and dealing with everything that incontinence brings to the job site, which is a lot.
Can
you
you
know?
explain for a second what Crohn's is? Because not everybody knows what Crohn's is or the implications of what it does to us with
Yeah,
pain and biology.
sure. I mean, I'll do my best. Crohn's is inflammation from gums to the bum. We don't really know why people get it, but there's probably a genetic factor.
Yep.
But I just started having really bad cramps whenever I would eat, and
Mm.
I started losing a bunch of weight, and I went to gastroenterologist, and I got blown off by multiple ones, and until I saw one finally, they gave me a colonoscopy. I actually got to the hospital from work, saw a doctor in the ER. He saw blood there, and he referred me to a gastroenterologist, and I jumped all the hoops, and I had a lot of inflammation down there when I finally got my colonoscopy, which was awesome, by the way. That was awesome.
Good times, right?
Great experience.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it. No sarcasm. Get a colonoscopy. It's probably good for you.
Just putting
Keeps
that
your,
on my to-do list right now. Thanks.
yeah, please do. Yeah,
Uh,
you should. It's really good for you, especially anyone 40 plus, right?
They
Best
they
thing
do
that, yeah,
often give you fentanyl.
they do.
Yeah, that's what you get way
Yep.
before your colonoscopy.
Yeah, fentanyl and a short-acting benzodiazepine,
Yeah.
midazolam, right? So, just a quick quip: people on the street right now are addicted to general anesthesia. That's what
Ah,
yeah.
people are
yeah,
doing, but
yeah.
doses in milligrams, not micrograms, right? So,
Wow, yeah, yeah.
general anesthesia. That's why people are so messed up.
Yeah, yeah.
People
Yeah,
are
when
on
you
general
combine
anesthesia.
combine those substances down and benzos, it does act that way.
Yeah,
It really people lose track of days and hours. They don't know where they are, what's going on,
yep,
and this is also why first responders are challenged with overdose response because of the way benzos are interacting with the opioids and we administer naloxone and people don't.
yep.
Um, Wake up, right? And so it's a new challenge that we're facing.
It's
I
absolutely,
I just
absolutely.
really appreciate the way that you just reframed that and like destigmatized it in that like because like obviously if you're going for colonoscopy you should be getting something to
You have
make that
to.
more
You have to,
comfortable.
dude. Yeah, you
you
have
can't
to.
you can't do it without it, so
Yeah.
but that's literally, yeah, people are taking general anesthesia on the
Yes.
streets.
Way
Wow.
higher doses. Way higher
Yeah.
doses, right? They'll give you 120 micrograms of fentanyl and 2 milligrams of midazolam and maybe some sclopamine and something else for your colonoscopy, which they have to give you, by the way, because if they don't, then you'll tighten up and they can't get in there, right? So,
Yes.
yeah, they gotta dope you up real good, especially with the benzo, just to loosen you up. So, gastroenterologist I was seeing at the time, yeah, you have ulcerative colitis, major inflammation in your lower bowels. Here's a course of prednisone. They gave me 30 milligrams of prednisone, 15 milligrams day and night. My face exploded. It's called moon face. Google it. It's wild. I gained a
Mm.
ton of water weight. I also on prednisone for 6 months. It messed me up big time. He also prescribed me Ativan 2 milligrams the entire time I was on prednisone. And I
Mm.
also got put on codeine because I needed it for my incontinence on the job site.
Wow.
And I'm not saying it's a doctor's fault. I needed this stuff. I needed it to function to work. I needed it,
Yeah.
or I poop my pants at work
Yeah, one
all
of
the
the
time.
side effects of opioids, so codeine is an opioid, is constipation, right?
Yes.
So
Yep.
that's generally a negative, but in your situation, that was intentional.
Needed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a must. It
So
was a
you're
must
just
have.
trying to function. So like literally, so you're not walking around in your regular daily life trying to go to work shit in your pants
Yep.
and having hazmat daily experiences. So
Right.
that's the point. Is
And
that
I did. I did. My straps for my water gear would like dangle at other people's waist, right? And I'd have to smell it all day. It was terrible. And
I'm assuming, Eris, that like you were in a situation, what was driving you to keep going? Like,
my
is
family.
this, but I mean, you're suffering here, you're in pain and you're still going to work.
Yeah.
It's not ideal situation. Yet you keep doing it. Like, is it, how and why?
My boss needed me. I've been
Mm.
loyal my entire life. I've had a very tight group of friends. I've had a family that's always stuck by me through all my situations as a teen and as a young adult. Best friends that have always been there for me, and I just have a very, very I keep loyalty on the top of my list. It was a small company, and I
Mm.
didn't want to like have to take time off. And I know hey, I can take some codeine to get through the day. I can ring, I can do things that don't require me to, whatever. And if I have to take a day off, then I have to take a day off, and they would support that, right? And I
So
also had a
your
family.
story's unique but also common. Like, I mean, it's unique to you, but it's also so many people in trades um medicating in different ways, some prescribed, some medicating themselves with various substances
Right.
just to function at work.
Yes,
And you probably witnessed that in others as well.
I did. Alcohol mostly, opiate use, and in my company, I don't know, this is not all companies, but cocaine use was frowned upon. Um, the bosses weren't never done drugs themselves. So that was a bonus. But when I started picking up cocaine on weekends again, that became a issue. And of course, alcohol and blow isn't too good for your stomach and your bowels,
Were
just when you're.
you like hiding this behavior
Yes,
or what? Yeah.
yes,
So is it?
absolutely, absolutely. I would sometimes I would even just lie and say, "Oh, I have a bad flare up," but I was just hungover, and it,
Mm,
it got progressively worse as the years went by. I had my own child in 2013. I started to drink a lot more in like end of 2013, 2014. I got a hookup for real oxy instant release.
mm,
So, like, from a pharmacy, from somebody, and would get that every now and then, and I would use that to numb myself. I would find prescription medication from other sources, use that to numb myself, and things just started to spiral slowly. But I, could use my disability as an excuse too. And
mm,
I'm not gonna lie here and say it was all Crohn's. Like, obviously that was an issue, but I wasn't treating my body with the reverence that I should have on the job site. And
mm,
because it was so frowned upon to use anything to excess, especially with my company, I hid it. I
mhm,
hid it and just blamed the thing I could blame, right? So I started having I had it on my own family. My son was born in 2013, and me and my wife got engaged in 2018, and a whole bunch of stuff happened along the way, right? I started having serious drainage issues. I got re-diagnosed with Crohn's disease in 2016. Got put on Remicade, which is it suppresses your immune system. Didn't really help, but made me get sicker easier, which isn't too good when you're in an unhygienic environment going to the bathroom.
mhm,
So I had issues with that. I got thrushed multiple times. But I still persevered and kept on getting that paycheck because I needed it. Car payments
yeah,
now, rent, right?
right.
I still wanted to party on weekends sometimes. I was doing music now with a group again, and I wanted to buy studio time. And this is the real pinnacle this is where everything came to a head. My wife was very, very pregnant with my second child, didn't know what the gender was. My doctor had retired. I didn't have access to anything to plug myself up or numb my pain or anything, and I had multiple surgeries now. So I was dealing with complications because of that. I was self-medicating a lot. I had a prescription for alprazolam. I had that he gave me for a long time just to taper me off. I had a prescription for an opiate to taper myself off, and he sort of left me to my own devices, and I gave him the confidence that I was capable of doing that.
Mm,
I started getting in a lot of pain, and I started self-medicating heavily, found a source for pills, started utilizing that source for pills, started doing a lot more coke, and one thing led to another. My wife was about to pop. I was in my basement suite by myself. I'd been arrested the night before for being intoxicated on the street. They had let me out. I had walked home, met up with a neighbor across the street. We went to my house. I don't remember any of this. This is just in the reports. And I ended up overdosing. The neighbor called 911 but left because they were afraid.
mm,
And it took the firefighters, I believe, 6 to 8 minutes, I think, 6 or 8 minutes to respond. So I was there with no oxygen and I had asphyxiated on my own vomit.
Wow.
Oh God.
Blue when they arrived. When they cleared my airway, paramedics came and they spent 25 plus minutes resuscitating me.
Do you know, Eris, what you had overdosed on?
It was fentanyl, but
And
they also cocaine and a whole slew of other drugs, dexedrine, alprazolam, cocaine were all in my talks. So we don't
right.
know.
But were you intentionally seeking to use fentanyl
No,
that night? Yeah.
absolutely not. No, I'd never, I'd always known that, like, but like I'd always kept myself quite educated on drugs. That was like a kind of a low key passion of mine to read drug articles ever since I started using MDMA when I was in high school. And I mean, this is kind of a weird flip, but my brother had died from a drug overdose when I was 11 years old.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
Yeah, and my first essay I wrote in grade 6 was like who your hero is, and I wrote about Ty,
Mm.
and he died. It was right before spring break that you had to hand the paper in. And I remember writing specifically, I hope he comes to my birthday party. We're supposed to go to Palladium, which is this big arcade that was a
Wow.
Burnaby at the time.
Mhm.
And he ended up dying at a rave, from being pinned down on MDMA by like 5 security guards, had a heart attack, and he died.
Jeez.
Yeah, and yeah, I'll never forget my father showing up and blank look on his face to pick me up from a friend's house. And I was like, what's wrong? Like, and he was just like looking at me. He was like saying goodbye to my best friend's mom who had picked me up from a slumber party that night. And I was wondering why my parents didn't pick me up, but it wasn't unusual for her to be my second parent. And I asked, "Is Percy okay, my cat?" And he's like, "No, we gotta talk." And on the walk home, he said, "Yeah, your brother. Like, I don't know how to tell you this, but your brother, he took a drug at a rave and it killed him." Like those
Wow.
words, like it killed him.
Mm.
Wow.
And I just like screamed and ran from like the catwalk down, like down one street into my house where my mom was like fetaled, surrounded by neighbors. There was already like there was a quite a religious family up the street. There was already like prepared meals there.
Mm.
Um, it was really traumatic. I spent a long time, dealing with that. Right, that left me an only child, and he was 10 years older than me, but he was, you know, he's my brother, and
Mm.
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
he left me an only child, and it also left me with parents who were destroyed.
Mhm. Mhm.
No idea how to navigate that, you know?
Yep.
So yeah, that was a big trauma. And then of course I start seeking drugs as soon as I got that first hit of MDMA. It was
So that's so just fascinating, like in a heartbreaking way that this inspired a like a passion for you in terms of being knowledgeable
yes,
and
yes,
and a desire to be safe and responsible when you're using substances. Yet
nailed it.
even with that knowledge and awareness, you experience this
Yep,
traumatic overdose yourself.
yep, yep. I, yeah, you're so right, man. That's no one's ever said that, but that's very, very true. That's very true. I mean, I use my brother's story and his trauma to this day when I tell people, a little bit about myself, and especially if people are insecure about, getting the drugs tested, which is my job now. We'll get to that, but yeah. So, anyways, we sort of like snapped to that. Cut back to this overdose. So they revived me, but my throat was so caked with vomit, they had to airway me there
Yeah.
to get air into me.
Mhm.
So I was not in good shape. My dad showed up just when they were wheeling me into the ambulance, and you can imagine what
Men.
my parents would have been going through.
Yeah, like they've already lost one
Yep,
child to an
yep,
overdose.
yep.
Wow.
And now it's their worst fear because I mean, of course, when I was like dabbling and using, they were scared. They told me multiple times all through the years, and I'd be like, "No, I know what I'm doing. I'm safe," and or I just deny it, lie, of course. And they were so worried all the time, right? They lost their son, and now they lost their other son. I was going to die. That was the prognosis. He's gonna die. He's probably not gonna make it. We see this all the time. People are dying all the time. He's not gonna make it. And So they get me to the hospital. I flatlined. I was in the resuscitation room for 6 hours where they worked on me tirelessly. I ended up in the ICU with major brain swelling, which led to a coma, which ultimately led because of anoxic brain injuries or hypoxic. Sorry, I always screw it up. But my hypoxic injuries. I had also had kidney failure and liver failure as well. So I was on dialysis. They had me on cooling pads. And just to cap it all off, my wife gave birth for 3 days. 3 days later on the 24th, right down the hall from the intensive care ward, where like I was pretty much being, I can't even say I was fighting for my life. People were fighting for my life.
Yeah.
The nurses
Wow.
and the doctors were fighting for me because I was dead. And I was pretty much brain dead at that time.
Wow.
I'm just so amazed at the, like, right off the top, you talked about family and being connected to you and being supportive, and just hearing, I mean, you're thinking about what these people around you, your family and your wife, are
Yeah.
going through
Oh yeah.
when you're in this state, and yet hearing that they stayed
They did.
connected and stayed there for you and supported you throughout
Yeah.
is so amazing, because so many times we hear these kinds of stories and the family disconnects. They take
Yeah.
off, or they just land in judgment
No.
and allow their disappointment to turn into anger and push their loved ones away from them. And yet it
Yeah.
sounds like your family pulled you in close.
They did, and my wife could have left me. She could have been, I'm done with this. I don't want this anymore. You know,
No doubt.
it'd been stop and go for a while, and she stuck with me, and I just really, it means so much to me that she, has been by my side, and trust me, it's
I'm here as a result of my wife sticking with me too.
yep,
Absolutely. Like, she had plenty of people giving her advice that maybe you should cut this
yep,
guy loose.
yeah,
And
even to this day
and
sometimes.
she ignored she ignored that advice, and she said she knew, one of the things she said was that like, she really saw the potential in me, but she invested, like, in sticking by my side. And then she said, I'm not giving up, because I know he's going to get over this, and I'm not letting
Yeah.
some other woman reap the rewards.
Dude, hey, I mean, I'm not gonna get too into like my wife's personal life, but
Mm.
we share some akin there, and she's an amazing woman,
Yeah.
and she raised I had to miss the birth of my daughter, and her friends rallied around her. She had really good friends. Her friends were there when she gave birth, holding her hand.
Wow, beautiful.
Friendship and is such an important and sometimes something that people don't have anybody. Some
Hmm.
people don't have anybody.
There's so many layers to this crisis, but I think underneath it all, it might be fair to say this is a crisis of connection. So many
Absolutely.
people are alone, disconnected, lonely. They don't have anyone supporting them. They don't have these relationships that are clearly the key, right?
Yep. It is the key.
So there you are in hospital, in coma. Your wife is giving birth, and like, like, where does this go from there?
So it was not good. When I had gone for my MRI, did not like being taken away from the machines, and I had actually flatlined in the elevator, and
Oh.
someone had to manually bag valve me the entire time. Like it was, I don't know if it was the entire time. That doesn't make sense, but it was for a while. My parents said, listen to them tell the story. Sometimes I have to just walk away because it's so wild that
Mm,
I'm even here. Sometimes I feel like it's a dream, but someone had to manually bag valve me for a while because I did flatline in the elevator, and the MRI came back with extensive damage to all parts of my brain. And they said that I would never, if I did come out of this somehow pull through, it'd be because of machines, and I would need to be put in a special place in Surrey, and the Aeris that is gone. He's never going to come back. And you should
wow.
think about pulling the plug and saying goodbye. It was every single day they told my family, send him to heaven. And my family's quite agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
And so that didn't stick. And they were like, send him to heaven. And every day I was still there in a coma. And every day my wife would be there with my daughter, and then it was days turned into weeks, turned into close to a month. So about 26 days. My best friend was living in Sweden, and he booked the what if he was told that I wasn't gonna pull through. He booked a flight to come there to be there with me because
Mm,
they were thinking about pulling the plug. But my buddy wanted to be there.
mm.
So he flew from Sweden. His flight got delayed somewhere halfway through for a couple days. He was waylaid, and in that time, I had opened my eyes.
Wow.
They had taken me off of all procedural sedation a week prior, and they're like, if he doesn't come out, he's never gonna come out. And I did come out in 3 days. They said 3 days. I did, and they're like, yeah, it's time. It's time. We're gonna have to pull the plug. And my buddy had already booked his flight and all that, but yeah, they're like, you gotta get here, man, because we're gonna pull the plug. He's probably suffering, or who knows what's going on. He's just not here. We don't. He doesn't want to live like this. You know what they say, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
So yeah, the arrangements were being made. GoFundMe was started. All that. Gonna die. Gonna
When
die.
you were in this state, do you have any memories or were you, at all? Or
No,
no?
not when I was in the coma, but when I was awake, I have very vivid, intense memories that could probably take up an entire other podcast. But let's just say that I thought I was a doctor working at the hospital, and I thought I was in a special ward for doctors who had gotten injured on the job, and I was literally walking around prescribing medication to people and stealing medications, and I was like a double-decker bus driver too, and crazy intense hallucinations like that are ingrained in my brain to this day, as
Because you had
real
so much
thoughts.
inflammation as well.
And all the stuff they had me on too,
Yeah.
just to
Yeah.
keep me, the seizures especially, a lot of
Mm.
seizure activity, right? So they had me on a cocktail, and yeah, so yeah, I hallucinated for a while, and that's the memories I had. But yeah, so I opened my eyes, and I don't remember this, but they're like, okay, well, he's blind because it shows in his occipital lobe that there's extensive damage, so he's blind. And then a couple days later, my family would be like, well, why is he following like my wife's friend with his eyes? Oh, he could hear her. And then
Mm.
I blurted out a name and looked at somebody, and it was like, oh, I guess he can see. And they're like, well, why do you say he was gonna die? Why do you say he was blind? Well, then the neurologist was like, well, we don't know that much about the brain.
Yeah.
We really just
Yeah.
don't know. It's just things are gonna happen now that are gonna like either shock or completely terrify you. We don't know. It's just, this guy is like not following procedure. He's not dying.
Not following the
Um,
textbook.
yeah. So I got moved to acute care where I was being tube fed, and I was being stomach fed, and still had a bunch of tubes. I still was on dialysis because my kidneys were shot. And I had actually pulled the trach out of my own throat at one point because I had more movement than they thought I could have. And
Mm.
I started flailing, and I pulled the trach out of my own throat. So they had to retrach me. And when they retrached me, in my head, I was hallucinating. I was in the back of a white Cadillac.
Mm.
It was insane. And so they had me strapped to these magnetic, like retractable straps in the hospital bed. And I was on dialysis, had to get wheeled to dialysis, which is where I realized that's where the double-decker bus hallucinations were coming from. Me
Mm.
being wheeled from the hospital ward to dialysis.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
What a
yeah. And
trip.
like all the characters in some of the characters in my dreams, like I went to a Burger King in the hallucination once, and the Burger King was the dialysis ward, and the server at the Burger King was the nurse at the dialysis ward, and like just crazy, crazy. Everything started to slowly fade back into reality.
Mm.
And I remember overhearing a nurse say, yeah, he's gonna need a kidney transplant. And I was like, who's gonna need a kidney transplant? And they looked at me, and they're like, what? Whoa. He just acknowledged like people in the room that are here, and like that are actually like, whoa. And like they got the doctor, and they're like, then I sort of all came to, but it was such like a weird, wasn't even shocked. I was just like, holy cow, this is what's happened, you know?
Okay, full disclosure, I was riveted the full recording of Aeris' story, and believe it or not, we're only halfway through. Find Aeris' story, part 2, to hear the incredible continuation of his resiliency, coming out July 22nd, 2024. Off the Clock Toolbox Talk has been a Fraser House Society project, executive produced and co-hosted by Karen Jansen, managed by Delan Young on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Coast Salish peoples. Production of this material has been made in part through a financial contribution from Health Canada. The views expressed herein do not necessarily reflect the views of Health Canada or Fraser House Society. The content of this podcast is conversation between people with living experience and should not be taken as professional advice. Special shout out to Mountainside Harm Reduction serving BC's Fraser Valley. Check out mtnsidesociety.ca. Help save lives. Go to tradespodcast.com and click on the link under Enter to win a $200 grocery card. When you fill out the survey, you help us understand what's working and what's not. Each survey for each episode listened to is a separate entry. Information collected is for survey purposes only and is not shared. Help us, help you.